When I walked into what I thought was a celebration of my promotion to Chief Financial Officer, I discovered my family had spent the last 3 years cultivating a relationship with someone they introduced as the daughter we always wanted. By the end of that evening, I had made a phone call that would remove them from a 7-figure inheritance they had been counting on for decades. Let me tell you how that moment changed everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The ballroom at the Grand Meridian Hotel buzzed with the familiar chaos of the annual Richardson family reunion, a tradition that had brought together 4 generations of my father's family every August for the past 32 years. I had driven 3 hours from Chicago specifically to share news that I believed would finally earn me the recognition and pride that had somehow always eluded me, despite years of professional achievements that far exceeded those of my cousins and siblings. My name is Victoria Richardson Walsh, and at 34 years old, I had just been promoted to Chief Financial Officer at Hartwell Industries, one of the largest manufacturing companies in the Midwest. The promotion represented the culmination of 12 years of strategic career development that had taken me from entry-level financial analyst to the executive suite through a combination of analytical excellence, innovative thinking, and relentless dedication to exceeding performance expectations in every role I had held. The achievement was particularly meaningful because it represented validation of capabilities that my family had consistently dismissed or minimized throughout my academic and professional development. During family gatherings over the years, my accomplishments had been acknowledged with polite congratulations that were immediately overshadowed by enthusiastic discussions of my brother Marcus's coaching achievements at the local high school, or my sister Diana's success in real estate sales. The pattern had been so consistent that I had begun to question whether my pursuit of executive-level career advancement was somehow inappropriate, or whether my family simply could not relate to achievements in corporate finance and strategic business management. I had convinced myself that sharing news of my promotion to Chief Financial Officer would finally demonstrate the significance of my professional contributions in terms that would command genuine respect and admiration. As I navigated through clusters of relatives catching up on marriages, divorces, graduations, and grandchildren, I felt genuinely optimistic about the reception my news would receive. The Chief Financial Officer position came with responsibilities that included overseeing annual budgets exceeding $200 million, managing relationships with major institutional investors, and participating in strategic decisions that would affect thousands of employees and their families. The role also included compensation that would enable me to contribute more substantially to family financial needs that had periodically arisen over the years. I had already begun considering how I might help my parents with the mounting costs of maintaining their aging home or assist my siblings with their children's college expenses. The financial security that accompanied my promotion created opportunities to demonstrate my commitment to family welfare in concrete and meaningful ways. I found my parents near the registration table, engaged in animated conversation with a woman I did not recognize who appeared to be approximately my age. She was elegantly dressed in a navy blue dress that complemented her auburn hair, and she carried herself with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to social situations and professional environments. As I approached their conversation, I heard my mother laughing with genuine delight at something the woman had said, displaying the kind of warmth and engagement that I had rarely witnessed directed toward my own contributions to family discussions. My father was nodding approvingly and asking follow-up questions that demonstrated the type of serious interest he typically reserved for topics he considered genuinely important. The woman noticed my approach and turned toward me with a welcoming smile that suggested she had been expecting to meet me. My mother looked up and said, "Victoria, perfect timing. I want you to meet Rebecca Morrison. Rebecca, this is my daughter Victoria, the one I mentioned who works in finance." Rebecca extended her hand with the professional confidence of someone accustomed to making favorable first impressions in business settings. She said, "Victoria, I have heard so much about you. Your parents are incredibly proud of your career success. I work in investment management myself, so I understand the challenges of advancing in financial services." The introduction seemed routine until my father added, Rebecca has become like a daughter to us over the past few years. She handles all our investment planning now and has been such a blessing to our family." His voice carried the tone of profound gratitude that I had expected to hear when I shared news of my promotion, but which was instead being directed towards someone I had never met. My mother nodded enthusiastically and continued, "Rebecca has been absolutely wonderful. She helped us restructure our retirement accounts and has been advising us on estate planning. We see her at least twice a month, and she always remembers to ask about everyone in the family." The warmth in her voice was unmistakable, and it contrasted sharply with the polite but distant interest she typically showed in my professional activities. Rebecca responded with modest appreciation for their praise while maintaining professional demeanor that suggested she was both competent and genuinely caring in her approach to client relationships. She said, "Your parents have made it easy for me to help them because they are so clear about their priorities and values. Family is obviously the most important thing to them, and that makes financial planning much more meaningful." As I listened to this exchange, I began to experience a growing sense of disorientation that transcended simple surprise at meeting someone new. The dynamic I was observing suggested a relationship that had developed significant depth and emotional significance over an extended period, yet I had no knowledge of Rebecca's existence or her role in my parents' financial planning. The conversation continued with Rebecca asking about my specific role in finance and expressing genuine interest in my career progression. However, I noticed that my parents seemed more engaged in observing her interest in my work than in hearing about my recent promotion or its significance for my professional development. They were watching Rebecca's reactions rather than focusing on the information I was providing about my new responsibilities and achievements. When I mentioned my promotion to Chief Financial Officer, Rebecca offered appropriate congratulations that demonstrated understanding of the significance of such an advancement. My parents acknowledged the news with brief expressions of pride, but their attention quickly returned to discussing Rebecca's recent achievements in growing her client base and her innovative approaches to retirement planning for families with complex financial situations. The realization that began to emerge during this conversation was both subtle and devastating. My parents were not simply working with a financial advisor who had impressed them with professional competence and personal attention to their needs. They had developed a relationship with someone who was fulfilling parental expectations and emotional needs that I had apparently failed to meet, despite decades of effort to earn their recognition and approval. Rebecca possessed qualities that my parents valued and appreciated in ways that my own achievements had never inspired. She combined professional excellence with personal warmth, business acumen with genuine interest in family relationships, and strategic thinking with emotional intelligence that enabled her to connect with their priorities and concerns on multiple levels simultaneously. The most painful aspect of this recognition was understanding that Rebecca was not trying to replace me or compete with me for my parents' affection. She was simply being herself in ways that naturally aligned with what my parents were seeking in a professional relationship, and apparently in a daughter-like connection that had evolved organically over months of regular interaction and mutual appreciation. As the conversation continued, I began to understand that this was not an isolated incident but rather a revelation of relationships and dynamics that had been developing without my knowledge or participation. Rebecca was integrated into my family's decision-making processes, financial planning, and apparently their emotional lives, in ways that I had never achieved, despite being their biological daughter and maintaining regular contact with them. The moment of devastating recognition was not simply about discovering Rebecca's existence, or even about understanding the depth of her relationship with my parents. It was about recognizing that I had been operating under fundamental misunderstandings about my role in my family and about the nature of the relationships I thought I had been building and maintaining over the years. The promotion I had driven 3 hours to share suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the revelation that my parents had found in Rebecca the kind of daughter they had apparently always wanted. The financial success I had achieved felt hollow when contrasted with the genuine emotional connection Rebecca had established with my parents through competent professional service, combined with authentic personal interest in their welfare and happiness. Standing in that hotel ballroom, surrounded by the familiar sounds of family reunion conversations and celebrations, I experienced a moment of clarity that would fundamentally alter my understanding of my relationships with my family and my expectations about the role I would play in their future financial security and estate planning. The devastating recognition was complete, and its implications would transform everything that followed. The initial shock of meeting Rebecca gradually gave way to systematic observation of family interactions that revealed patterns of exclusion and preference that had been operating beneath the surface of routine family gatherings for years. As the evening progressed, I began to notice subtle but consistent behaviors that demonstrated Rebecca's integration into family dynamics, while highlighting my own peripheral status in relationships I had believed were central to our collective identity. During the cocktail hour preceding dinner, I watched as various relatives approached my parents to greet them and inquire about recent developments in their lives. Without exception, these conversations included references to Rebecca's contributions to family financial planning, her thoughtful approach to understanding their long-term goals, and her ability to explain complex investment strategies in terms that made sense for their particular situation and risk tolerance. My Aunt Margaret, who had always been particularly close to my mother, spent several minutes discussing how impressed she had been when my parents had introduced Rebecca at a smaller family gathering the previous spring. She mentioned that Rebecca had volunteered to review Margaret's own investment portfolio and had provided insights that her previous financial advisor had never offered. The conversation was filled with appreciation for Rebecca's expertise and genuine gratitude for her willingness to extend professional assistance to extended family members. Uncle James, my father's younger brother, approached our group specifically to thank Rebecca for the retirement planning seminar she had conducted for several family members during a gathering at my parents' home earlier in the summer. He mentioned that her presentation had helped him and his wife restructure their savings strategy in ways that would significantly improve their financial security during retirement years. These interactions revealed that Rebecca had not simply established a professional relationship with my parents, but had become integrated into extended family activities and had provided valuable services to multiple relatives who now considered her a trusted advisor and valued family friend. The depth and breadth of these relationships suggested months or years of development that had occurred entirely outside my awareness or participation. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. As I listened to these conversations, I began to understand that my absence from family financial discussions was not simply a matter of professional boundaries or appropriate separation between personal and business matters. My parents had made deliberate choices to engage Rebecca in family financial planning while excluding me from conversations and decisions that would ultimately affect my inheritance and my siblings' financial futures. The realization was particularly painful because my educational background and professional experience had prepared me to provide exactly the type of financial guidance and strategic planning that my parents were receiving from Rebecca. I possessed advanced knowledge of investment management, estate planning, tax strategy, and wealth preservation that could have benefited my family significantly. However, they had chosen to work with an outside advisor rather than involving me in these critical discussions and decisions. During dinner, the seating arrangement further illustrated my peripheral status within family dynamics that had evolved during my absence. Rebecca was seated between my parents at the head table, positioned as an honored guest whose presence was considered essential to the family celebration. I was seated with my cousins at a table that was positioned to provide a clear view of the interactions between Rebecca and various family elders who approached throughout the evening to continue conversations they had obviously begun during previous gatherings. The conversations I observed revealed that Rebecca possessed detailed knowledge about family members' personal situations, financial concerns, and long-term goals that I had never been invited to discuss or contribute to addressing. She was aware of my cousin David's concerns about funding his daughter's college education, my Aunt Susan's worries about her husband's health insurance coverage, and my Uncle Robert's questions about the timing of his retirement from his accounting practice. More significantly, Rebecca was actively involved in helping family members address these concerns through coordinated financial strategies that took advantage of group purchasing power for insurance, collaborative investment approaches that reduced fees and increased diversification, and estate planning techniques that would benefit multiple generations simultaneously. She had essentially become the family's chief financial officer, a role that I was uniquely qualified to fill, but had never been invited to consider. The evening's program included a traditional presentation of family achievements and milestones from the previous year. When my father stood to acknowledge significant accomplishments by family members, he spent considerable time thanking Rebecca for her contributions to family financial security and her dedication to helping multiple relatives achieve their long-term financial goals. His comments were filled with genuine appreciation and affection that conveyed deep respect for her professional capabilities and personal character. When he mentioned my promotion to Chief Financial Officer, the acknowledgement was brief and formal, lacking the emotional warmth and detailed appreciation he had expressed regarding Rebecca's contributions to family welfare. The contrast was subtle but unmistakable, and it crystallized my understanding of how my achievements were perceived within family dynamics that had evolved to prioritize different types of success and contribution. Following the formal presentations, I attempted to engage various family members in conversations about their financial planning and my potential contributions to family wealth management strategies. These conversations revealed that most relatives were already working with Rebecca or planning to engage her services for specific financial planning needs. They were polite about my professional qualifications but clearly satisfied with the guidance and support they were receiving through Rebecca's comprehensive approach to family financial coordination. The most devastating aspect of these discoveries was recognizing that my family had created an integrated financial planning system that excluded me entirely, while addressing exactly the type of complex, multi-generational wealth management challenges that I was professionally equipped to handle. They had essentially hired someone else to fill the role I should have been invited to play within our family's long-term financial strategy and estate planning process. As the evening concluded, I began to understand that the relationships and dynamics I was observing were not recent developments but represented the culmination of years of gradual evolution in family financial management that had occurred without my knowledge or input. My parents had been working with Rebecca for at least 3 years, during which time she had established herself as their primary financial advisor and had extended her services to multiple family members, who now considered her an indispensable part of their financial security and long-term planning. The unraveling of family dynamics revealed that my exclusion from financial planning discussions was not accidental oversight but deliberate choice based on their assessment that Rebecca could provide more comprehensive and valuable guidance than I could offer. This assessment was particularly painful because it ignored my professional qualifications, while implying that my family relationships were insufficient foundation for the trust and collaboration that effective financial planning requires. The recognition that my family had essentially replaced me in the financial planning role that should have been mine by birthright and professional qualification created the foundation for decisions that would transform our relationships permanently. The unraveling was complete, and its implications would drive everything that followed in this journey toward establishing appropriate boundaries and consequences for their choices regarding my role in family financial matters and estate planning considerations. The following morning brought additional revelations that expanded my understanding of the systematic exclusion from family financial matters that had been developing over multiple years. While I had remained focused on advancing my professional career and assuming that family relationships were stable and predictable, these discoveries would prove that the previous evening's introductions and conversations represented only the visible portion of much more extensive changes in family dynamics and financial planning strategies. I had arranged to meet my parents for breakfast at their hotel before beginning my drive back to Chicago, expecting to have private time to discuss my promotion in detail and explore opportunities for contributing to family financial planning in ways that could benefit everyone, while utilizing my professional expertise and institutional resources. However, when I arrived at the restaurant, I discovered that Rebecca had been invited to join our breakfast meeting without my knowledge or consultation. The conversation that followed revealed the extent of financial planning activities that had been conducted without my involvement or awareness. Rebecca had prepared comprehensive estate planning documents for my parents that included detailed provisions for charitable giving, tax-efficient wealth transfer strategies, and coordinated investment management that would continue after my parents' deaths. These plans had been developed over many months of regular meetings and collaborative analysis that had never been mentioned during my routine phone conversations with my parents. More significantly, the estate planning documents included specific provisions that would substantially reduce the inheritance amounts my siblings and I would receive, while increasing financial benefits for Rebecca's services, and expanding charitable contributions to organizations that Rebecca had recommended. These changes had been implemented without consultation with the beneficiaries who would be affected by these decisions, and without consideration of how these modifications might affect our financial planning and long-term security. When I expressed surprise that such significant estate planning changes had been made without family discussion, my parents explained that Rebecca had convinced them that family involvement in estate planning discussions often created unnecessary conflict and emotional complications that prevented optimal financial decision-making. They had accepted her recommendation to develop and implement comprehensive plans before sharing details with family members who would be affected by these decisions. This explanation revealed that Rebecca had not simply provided professional financial services but had actively influenced my parents' thinking about appropriate family communication and involvement in financial planning processes. She had positioned herself as protective advisor who could shield them from potential family conflict, while ensuring that their financial goals were achieved without interference from relatives who might have different priorities or perspectives. The breakfast conversation also revealed that Rebecca had been providing regular reports to my parents about financial market conditions, investment performance, and strategic recommendations that included detailed analysis of economic trends and their implications for wealth preservation and growth strategies. These reports were distributed monthly and included personalized recommendations based on my parents' specific financial situation and risk tolerance preferences. I asked to review recent financial reports and discovered that Rebecca's analysis and recommendations consistently exceeded the quality and comprehensiveness of materials I had seen from major investment firms serving high-net-worth clients. Her work demonstrated sophisticated understanding of tax policy, estate planning law, investment strategy, and economic forecasting that rivaled the expertise of senior professionals at premier financial services organizations. The quality of Rebecca's work made it impossible to criticize my parents' decision to engage her services based on professional competence or analytical capability. However, the scope of her influence over family financial matters extended far beyond technical advice to include strategic recommendations about family communication, inheritance planning, and charitable giving that reflected her personal values and priorities rather than comprehensive consideration of family members' perspectives and needs. During breakfast, my parents shared additional details about Rebecca's background and qualifications that explained her ability to provide such comprehensive financial services. She possessed advanced degrees in finance and taxation, professional certifications in estate planning and investment management, and extensive experience working with high-net-worth families who required coordinated strategies for wealth preservation, tax optimization, and multi-generational planning. Her professional qualifications were impressive, but they were not substantially different from my own educational background and career development in corporate finance and investment management. The primary difference was that she had specialized in serving individual families, while I had focused on institutional financial management and corporate strategic planning. However, the analytical skills and strategic thinking required for both areas were fundamentally similar. The conversation revealed that my parents had never seriously considered involving me in family financial planning, despite my professional qualifications, because they had assumed that my corporate responsibilities would prevent me from dedicating adequate time and attention to their personal financial needs. They had concluded that working with an independent advisor who could focus exclusively on family financial matters would produce better outcomes than relying on a family member who had competing professional obligations. This assumption was particularly frustrating because my recent promotion had created opportunities for me to provide exactly the type of comprehensive financial services that Rebecca was delivering, while leveraging institutional resources and professional relationships that could have generated superior investment returns and more sophisticated planning strategies. My parents had made their decision to work with Rebecca before learning about my career advancement and expanded capabilities. The breakfast meeting also revealed that Rebecca had been providing financial guidance to my siblings regarding their personal investment strategies, retirement planning, and insurance needs. She had established professional relationships with Marcus and Diana that paralleled her work with my parents, creating a comprehensive family financial management system that integrated multiple generations' planning needs while excluding me entirely from these collaborative efforts. When I asked why I had not been informed about these expanded family financial relationships, my parents explained that Rebecca had recommended maintaining confidentiality about individual family members' financial situations to prevent potential conflicts or misunderstandings that might arise from sharing personal financial information across family relationships that might have different perspectives about appropriate financial strategies and priorities. This explanation revealed another dimension of Rebecca's influence over family dynamics that extended beyond technical financial advice to include strategic recommendations about family communication and relationship management. She had essentially convinced my family to adopt privacy practices that prevented collaborative financial planning, while positioning herself as the central coordinator for all family financial matters. The systematic exclusion from family financial planning represented not simply professional oversight but deliberate restructuring of family relationships that elevated Rebecca's role while diminishing mine. The discovery of these hidden exclusions would provide the foundation for understanding the full scope of changes that had occurred in family dynamics, and the rationale for decisions that would follow regarding my response to these developments and their implications for future family relationships and financial arrangements. The scope of Rebecca's influence over family financial matters became clearer during subsequent conversations that revealed strategic planning decisions she had recommended that would significantly benefit her professionally while potentially compromising my family's long-term financial security and flexibility. These discoveries transformed my understanding of her role from trusted advisor to someone whose recommendations consistently served her business interests while claiming to prioritize family welfare and optimal financial outcomes. Later that morning, I requested to review detailed financial statements and planning documents that Rebecca had prepared for my parents over the previous 3 years. The analysis revealed sophisticated strategies that were technically sound but structured in ways that would generate substantial ongoing fees for Rebecca's services, while creating dependency relationships that would be difficult for my parents to modify or terminate without significant financial penalties and administrative complications. The investment management agreements Rebecca had negotiated included unusually high fee structures that combined annual management fees with performance bonuses and transaction costs that would reduce my parents' net investment returns significantly compared to comparable services available through major institutional investment firms. These fee arrangements were legal and clearly disclosed, but they were structured to maximize Rebecca's compensation while potentially compromising optimal portfolio performance over extended time periods. More concerning were estate planning strategies that included complex trust structures and charitable giving arrangements that would require ongoing professional management and would generate substantial annual fees for Rebecca's services for potentially decades after my parents' deaths. These structures were technically sophisticated, but unnecessarily complex for my parents' financial situation and estate planning objectives. The complexity appeared designed to ensure that Rebecca's professional services would remain essential for managing my family's financial affairs, regardless of changes in family circumstances or preferences. The structure she had recommended would make it extremely difficult for family members to modify estate planning arrangements or investment management approaches, without incurring substantial costs and potential tax implications that could offset any benefits from alternative strategies. During my review of financial documents, I discovered that Rebecca had recommended investment strategies that concentrated significant portions of my parents' portfolio in financial products and investment vehicles that generated higher commissions and fees for her firm, while potentially exposing my parents to greater risks, and reduced diversification compared to broader market index investments that would have provided superior long-term returns with lower costs. The investment recommendations were presented with detailed analysis that justified the recommended approaches based on risk management and return optimization objectives. However, independent analysis revealed that comparable or superior outcomes could have been achieved through simpler investment strategies that would have reduced costs substantially while maintaining appropriate risk levels for my parents' age and financial circumstances. Rebecca had also recommended insurance products and annuity contracts that provided guaranteed income streams during retirement, but included substantial penalties for early withdrawal and limited flexibility for adapting to changing financial needs or family circumstances. These products generated significant commissions for Rebecca while potentially constraining my parents' financial flexibility during periods when they might need access to capital for healthcare expenses or family financial emergencies. The insurance and annuity recommendations were supported by detailed projections that demonstrated favorable outcomes under specific assumptions about market performance, healthcare costs, and longevity. However, these projections did not adequately address scenarios where my parents might need greater financial flexibility, or where investment market conditions might make alternative strategies more advantageous over extended time periods. Perhaps most concerning were charitable giving strategies that Rebecca had recommended that would provide substantial tax benefits for my parents, while directing significant financial resources toward charitable organizations where Rebecca served on boards of directors or advisory committees. These arrangements created potential conflicts of interest that were not clearly disclosed in planning documents or discussion materials. The charitable giving structures were technically legal and would provide genuine tax advantages for my parents, while supporting legitimate charitable organizations that conducted valuable community service activities. However, the arrangements also enhanced Rebecca's professional reputation and business development opportunities, while potentially limiting charitable giving flexibility for my parents if their priorities or interests changed over time. My analysis revealed that Rebecca's recommendations consistently favored approaches that would generate ongoing professional fees and maintain long-term client relationships over strategies that might provide superior financial outcomes for my family, while reducing dependency on professional financial management services. The pattern was subtle but consistent across investment management, estate planning, insurance, and charitable giving recommendations. The financial manipulation was not illegal or technically unethical according to industry standards for professional financial advisory services. However, the recommendations consistently prioritized Rebecca's business interests while claiming to optimize outcomes for my family, creating conflicts of interest that were not adequately disclosed or addressed in planning discussions and decision-making processes. The revelation of financial manipulation patterns provided context for understanding why Rebecca had recommended excluding family members from estate planning discussions and financial decision-making processes. Family involvement might have identified these conflicts of interest and questioned recommendations that served Rebecca's interests while potentially compromising optimal outcomes for my parents and their beneficiaries. The discovery of these patterns also explained Rebecca's efforts to establish comprehensive relationships with multiple family members, while positioning herself as indispensable coordinator for all family financial matters. This strategy ensured that her professional services would remain essential regardless of changes in individual family circumstances, while making it difficult for any family member to obtain independent analysis of her recommendations and their long-term implications. The systematic financial manipulation represented a sophisticated approach to client relationship management that was designed to maximize professional revenue while maintaining client satisfaction through technically competent service delivery. However, the approach prioritized Rebecca's financial interests over optimal outcomes for my family, creating foundation for decisions about appropriate responses to these discoveries and their implications for future family financial planning and estate management strategies. The revelation of financial manipulation would prove crucial for understanding the full scope of changes needed to protect my family's financial interests, while establishing appropriate boundaries regarding professional advisory relationships and their influence over family dynamics and long-term financial security planning. The accumulation of evidence regarding Rebecca's systematic influence over family financial matters and her strategic positioning to benefit from long-term professional relationships reached a critical threshold during a phone conversation with my attorney the following Tuesday. The legal analysis of estate planning documents and financial agreements revealed the full scope of how my family's wealth would be managed and distributed, creating absolute clarity about the choices I faced regarding my response to these developments. My attorney, Sarah Chen, had reviewed the estate planning documents my parents had signed over the previous 18 months at Rebecca's recommendation. Her analysis revealed that these arrangements would reduce my siblings and my inheritance by approximately 60% compared to previous estate planning provisions, while substantially increasing fees and commissions that would be paid to Rebecca's firm over potentially decades of ongoing wealth management and trust administration services. The financial impact of these changes was significant in absolute terms, representing hundreds of thousands of dollars in reduced inheritance for each sibling, but the implications extended far beyond immediate financial considerations. The new arrangements demonstrated that my parents had fundamentally altered their priorities regarding wealth transfer and family financial security, based on recommendations from someone whose professional interests were directly aligned with maximizing long-term fee generation rather than optimizing family financial outcomes. Sarah's analysis also revealed that the estate planning structures Rebecca had recommended were unnecessarily complex for my parents' financial situation, and could have been achieved through simpler approaches that would have provided comparable tax advantages, while preserving greater flexibility for future modifications and reducing ongoing administrative costs. The complexity appeared designed to ensure Rebecca's continued involvement rather than to optimize estate planning effectiveness. Perhaps most concerning were provisions that would give Rebecca significant discretionary authority over investment decisions and distribution timing for trust assets that would affect my siblings and their children for potentially decades after my parents' deaths. These provisions would essentially make Rebecca the primary decision-maker regarding family wealth management, while limiting beneficiaries' ability to modify or terminate these arrangements without her agreement. The legal analysis revealed that while these arrangements were technically valid and legally enforceable, they represented fundamental changes in family financial relationships that had been implemented without consultation with the individuals who would be most affected by these decisions. My parents had essentially transferred significant control over family financial matters to someone whose long-term interests were not necessarily aligned with family welfare and financial security. During this conversation with my attorney, I experienced a moment of absolute clarity about the choice I faced regarding my response to these developments. I could either accept the exclusion from family financial planning and the reduced inheritance that would result from Rebecca's influence, or I could take definitive action to establish consequences for decisions that had been made without my involvement or consultation. The clarity extended beyond immediate financial considerations to include understanding about the type of relationships I wanted to maintain with family members who had made strategic decisions that prioritized external professional relationships over family collaboration and communication. The systematic exclusion from financial planning discussions reflected broader patterns of relationship management that were incompatible with my values regarding family loyalty and mutual support. The moment of clarity also involved recognizing that my professional qualifications and career achievements had been systematically dismissed in favor of external advice that was not necessarily superior but was packaged in ways that appeared more comprehensive and sophisticated than family-based financial planning approaches. This dismissal reflected lack of confidence in my capabilities that was particularly painful given my recent career advancement and expanding professional responsibilities. The realization that Rebecca had positioned herself to receive financial benefits that could exceed my inheritance over extended time periods created additional perspective on the scope of financial manipulation that had occurred. She had essentially convinced my parents to restructure their estate planning in ways that would transfer substantial wealth from family members to her professional practice, while maintaining the appearance of providing superior financial advisory services. The absolute clarity that emerged during this legal analysis included understanding that the financial arrangements my parents had implemented were designed to be difficult to modify or challenge, creating long-term consequences that would extend far beyond their lifetimes and would affect my siblings and their children's financial security for potentially decades. These arrangements represented permanent changes that could not be easily reversed through future family discussions or negotiations. The moment of clarity culminated in recognition that my response to these developments would define the type of relationships I would have with my family members going forward, and would establish precedents for how financial matters and family decision-making would be handled in future situations. The choice was not simply about immediate financial considerations, but about fundamental principles regarding family loyalty, communication, and mutual respect. The legal analysis had provided objective confirmation of subjective concerns I had been developing about Rebecca's influence and the implications of her recommendations for family financial security and relationship dynamics. The evidence was clear and comprehensive, eliminating any possibility that my concerns were based on misunderstanding or incomplete information rather than accurate assessment of problematic developments. The absolute clarity that emerged from this legal consultation created foundation for making definitive decisions about appropriate responses to systematic exclusion from family financial planning and the financial manipulation that had occurred over multiple years while I had remained focused on professional development and had assumed that family relationships remained stable and predictable. The moment of clarity would prove essential for maintaining confidence in decisions that would follow, and for ensuring that those decisions were based on comprehensive understanding of facts and implications, rather than emotional reactions to disappointing discoveries about family dynamics and relationship priorities. The clarity provided intellectual and emotional foundation necessary for taking action that would establish appropriate consequences for decisions that had been made without consultation, while protecting my long-term financial interests and establishing boundaries that would prevent similar situations from developing in future family financial planning and estate management processes. The drive back to Chicago provided 3 hours of uninterrupted time to process the revelations from the family reunion, and to examine the patterns of professional dismissal that had apparently been operating within my family relationships for years without my conscious recognition. The highway stretched ahead through familiar Illinois farmland, while my mind worked through the implications of discovering that my advanced education, corporate experience, and recent promotion to Chief Financial Officer had been deemed insufficient qualifications for managing my own family's financial planning and estate management needs. The professional dismissal was particularly devastating because it contradicted everything I had believed about my family's pride in my career achievements and their recognition of my analytical capabilities and strategic thinking skills. Throughout my academic and professional development, I had interpreted their polite acknowledgments of my promotions and accomplishments as evidence of genuine respect for my expertise and growing influence within the corporate finance industry. The reality revealed at the reunion was that my family had systematically excluded me from financial discussions, while engaging an external advisor whose qualifications, while impressive, were not substantially superior to my own educational background and professional experience. Rebecca Morrison possessed advanced degrees in finance and taxation, but I held an MBA in financial management from Northwestern University and had completed advanced certification programs in investment analysis and corporate strategic planning through the CFA Institute. My professional experience included 12 years of progressively responsible positions in corporate finance, culminating in my recent promotion to Chief Financial Officer at Hartwell Industries, where I oversee annual budgets exceeding $200 million and manage relationships with institutional investors, investment banks, and strategic planning consultants who serve Fortune 500 companies. My responsibilities include exactly the type of analytical work and strategic financial planning that Rebecca was providing for my family. The dismissal of my qualifications was particularly difficult to understand because my recent promotion had expanded my access to institutional resources and professional relationships that could have provided my family with superior investment opportunities, estate planning strategies, and tax optimization techniques compared to services available through independent financial advisors serving individual clients. Major investment banks and institutional money managers offer preferred pricing and exclusive investment opportunities to corporate executives that are not available to retail clients. My position at Hartwell Industries also provided access to sophisticated estate planning and wealth management services through institutional relationships with premier law firms and accounting practices that specialize in serving high-net-worth executives and their families. These services are typically superior to independent advisory services because they leverage institutional purchasing power and specialized expertise that individual advisors cannot match. The professional dismissal extended beyond simply overlooking my qualifications to include making assumptions about my availability and interest in family financial planning that had never been tested through actual conversation or consultation. My parents had concluded that my corporate responsibilities would prevent adequate attention to family financial matters without ever discussing my willingness to prioritize family financial planning or my capacity to manage both corporate and family financial responsibilities effectively. The assumption about my availability was particularly frustrating because my recent promotion had actually increased my flexibility for managing personal and family financial matters. Senior executive positions often provide greater schedule autonomy and resources for handling personal business during working hours, compared to junior positions that require constant presence and attention to routine operational responsibilities. My parents had also assumed that I would not be interested in providing comprehensive financial planning services for family members, because my corporate focus was on institutional rather than individual financial management. However, the analytical skills and strategic thinking required for corporate financial management are directly applicable to personal and family financial planning, and many senior executives successfully manage both institutional and family financial responsibilities simultaneously. The professional dismissal revealed deeper issues regarding my family's understanding of my career trajectory and professional capabilities. They appeared to view my corporate finance work as narrowly specialized technical expertise that was not relevant to broader financial planning needs. rather than recognizing that corporate financial management requires comprehensive understanding of investment strategy, risk management, tax planning, and strategic analysis that applies directly to personal and family financial planning challenges. The misconception about the relevance of my professional expertise suggested that my family had never engaged in serious conversations about my work responsibilities, analytical capabilities, or strategic thinking processes. They had formed impressions about my professional qualifications based on superficial understanding of corporate finance roles, rather than comprehensive knowledge of the skills and expertise required for successful performance in senior financial management positions. The pattern of professional dismissal extended to their evaluation of potential conflicts of interest that might affect my ability to provide objective financial advice for family members. They had apparently concluded that my corporate responsibilities would create bias toward institutional investment approaches that might not serve family interests effectively, without considering that my institutional experience provided valuable perspective about investment quality and fee structures that could benefit family financial planning. The concern about conflicts of interest was ironic because Rebecca's recommendations consistently served her business interests through high fee structures and complex planning arrangements that generated ongoing revenue for her practice, while my involvement in family financial planning would have been motivated by family welfare rather than professional profit. The actual conflicts of interest lay with the external advisor whose compensation depended on maintaining client relationships and maximizing billable services. My family's decision to work with Rebecca rather than involving me in financial planning discussions also reflected assumptions about appropriate family dynamics and professional relationships that prioritized external objectivity over family collaboration and trust. They had apparently concluded that family financial planning required professional detachment that could not be maintained in family relationships, despite evidence that many successful families effectively combine family collaboration with professional expertise. The professional dismissal was compounded by the realization that Rebecca had actively influenced my family's thinking about appropriate boundaries between professional advisory services and family involvement in financial planning. She had essentially convinced them that family members should not participate in financial planning discussions because emotional relationships might interfere with objective decision-making, despite the fact that family members are typically the most motivated to ensure optimal outcomes for family financial security. The influence Rebecca had exercised over family thinking about appropriate professional relationships revealed sophisticated client management strategies designed to minimize external review of her recommendations while maximizing her control over financial planning processes. She had positioned family involvement as potential obstacle to effective financial planning rather than valuable resource for ensuring that planning decisions aligned with family values and long-term interests. The systematic exclusion from family financial planning represented not simply oversight or poor communication, but deliberate decision-making based on professional advice that served Rebecca's business interests while potentially compromising optimal outcomes for my family. The advice to exclude family members from financial planning discussions eliminated potential sources of independent analysis and alternative perspectives that might have identified problems with her recommendations. The weight of professional dismissal extended beyond immediate financial planning considerations to include broader implications for family relationships and communication patterns that had been restructured based on external professional advice rather than family priorities and values. My parents had allowed Rebecca to influence fundamental aspects of family dynamics and decision-making processes in ways that elevated her role while diminishing mine. The recognition that my professional qualifications had been systematically dismissed in favor of external advice that was not necessarily superior created foundation for understanding that the problem extended beyond communication failures or misunderstanding to include fundamental issues regarding family loyalty, trust, and appropriate boundaries between professional advisory relationships and family collaboration in important financial decisions affecting multiple generations. The professional dismissal would prove to be crucial evidence supporting decisions about appropriate responses to systematic exclusion from family financial planning and the need to establish consequences that would protect my long-term interests while demonstrating the cost of dismissing qualified family members in favor of external advisors whose primary loyalty was to their own business success rather than family welfare and financial security. The week following the family reunion brought a series of telephone conversations with extended family members that revealed the depth and sophistication of the deception that had been operating around my family's financial planning for several years. These conversations exposed a carefully constructed narrative that Rebecca had developed to explain my absence from family financial discussions, while positioning herself as the protective advisor who was shielding my parents from potential family conflict and ensuring optimal financial outcomes. My cousin Jennifer, who had always maintained close relationships with various family members and served as an informal communication hub for family news and developments, called on Wednesday evening to express her confusion about the previous weekend's events. She had expected my parents to be celebrating my promotion to Chief Financial Officer with the same enthusiasm they had shown for Rebecca's achievements and contributions to family financial security over the previous 3 years. During this conversation, Jennifer revealed that Rebecca had explained my absence from family financial planning by suggesting that my corporate responsibilities created potential conflicts of interest that could compromise objective advice regarding personal and family financial matters. According to Rebecca's explanation, my position at Hartwell Industries required loyalty to corporate financial strategies that might not align with individual family financial planning needs and investment approaches. This explanation was particularly sophisticated because it contained elements of technical accuracy regarding potential conflicts between corporate and personal financial responsibilities, while completely misrepresenting the actual nature of my professional obligations and ethical constraints. Corporate finance executives are typically required to avoid conflicts between personal investments and corporate financial activities, but these requirements do not prevent participation in family financial planning or providing general financial guidance to family members. Rebecca had also suggested to various family members that my corporate focus on institutional investment management and large-scale financial analysis might not translate effectively to personal financial planning that requires attention to individual circumstances, risk tolerance preferences, and long-term family goals that differ significantly from corporate financial objectives and institutional investment strategies. The suggestion that corporate financial expertise was not applicable to personal financial planning demonstrated either fundamental misunderstanding of financial analysis and strategic planning principles or deliberate misrepresentation designed to discredit my potential contributions to family financial planning. The analytical skills required for corporate financial management are directly applicable to personal financial planning and often provide superior perspective on investment quality, fee structures, and long-term financial strategy development. Jennifer's conversation revealed that Rebecca had positioned herself as the family financial advisor who could provide objective guidance without the emotional complications and potential conflicts that might arise from family involvement in financial planning discussions. She had essentially convinced multiple family members that professional detachment was essential for optimal financial planning outcomes, and that family relationships could interfere with rational decision-making about investment strategies and estate planning arrangements. The narrative Rebecca had constructed was particularly effective because it appealed to family members' desire to avoid potential conflict while ensuring professional quality financial planning services. She had created the impression that choosing between family involvement and professional excellence was necessary, rather than recognizing that combining family collaboration with professional expertise often produces superior outcomes for family financial planning and wealth management strategies. My conversation with Jennifer also revealed that Rebecca had suggested to family members that my recent career advancement might create scheduling conflicts that would prevent adequate attention to family financial planning needs. She had implied that senior corporate executives typically prioritize professional responsibilities over family financial matters, and that working with dedicated family financial advisors was more reliable than depending on family members who had competing professional obligations. This suggestion was particularly manipulative because it transformed my professional success into a liability for family financial planning, rather than recognizing it as an asset that could provide superior resources and capabilities for family wealth management. Rebecca had essentially convinced family members that my career advancement made me less suitable for family financial advisory roles, rather than more qualified to provide sophisticated financial guidance. The systematic deception extended to Rebecca's characterization of appropriate estate planning and wealth management strategies for families with significant assets and complex financial situations. She had convinced my parents that their financial situation required specialized expertise in estate planning law, tax optimization strategies, and investment management that was not available through traditional family financial collaboration or general corporate financial expertise. While estate planning and wealth management do require specialized knowledge and professional expertise, Rebecca had overstated the complexity of my parents' financial situation and the specialized services required to address their planning needs effectively. Her recommendations had created unnecessary complexity that required ongoing professional management and generated substantial fees for her services, while potentially compromising optimal outcomes for family financial security and wealth preservation. The deception also included suggestions that family involvement in estate planning discussions often creates emotional conflicts and inheritance disputes that can be avoided through professional estate planning services that minimize family participation in planning processes. Rebecca had positioned family exclusion as a protective measure, rather than recognizing that family involvement typically improves estate planning outcomes by ensuring that planning decisions align with family values and relationship dynamics. During subsequent conversations with other family members, I discovered that Rebecca had provided different explanations for my absence, from family financial planning to different relatives, tailoring her narrative to address specific concerns or questions that individual family members might raise about excluding me from financial planning discussions, despite my obvious qualifications and potential contributions. To family members who knew about my financial expertise, she emphasized potential conflicts of interest and scheduling constraints associated with corporate responsibilities. To relatives who were less familiar with my professional qualifications, she suggested that family financial planning required specialized expertise that differed from corporate financial management skills and experience. The variations in explanation revealed sophisticated understanding of family dynamics and communication patterns that enabled Rebecca to provide credible justification for my exclusion, while avoiding consistent narrative that might be easily challenged or questioned through family discussions about the rationale for excluding qualified family members from important financial planning decisions. My Uncle Thomas, who had worked in insurance and financial services before retirement, called later that week to express his concern about the estate planning arrangements that Rebecca had recommended for my parents. His professional experience had enabled him to recognize that the recommended structures were unnecessarily complex and potentially more expensive than simpler approaches that could achieve comparable outcomes with greater flexibility and lower ongoing costs. Thomas revealed that when he had questioned the complexity and cost of Rebecca's recommendations during a family gathering several months earlier, she had suggested that his concerns reflected outdated understanding of modern estate planning strategies, and that current tax law and investment market conditions required more sophisticated approaches than traditional estate planning methods that might have been appropriate in previous decades. This response had effectively dismissed his professional expertise while positioning Rebecca as the knowledgeable advisor who understood current requirements for optimal estate planning outcomes. The dismissal had prevented further family discussion of estate planning alternatives and had reinforced the impression that Rebecca's expertise was superior to family members' understanding of financial planning principles and strategies. The systematic deception had been remarkably effective in preventing family scrutiny of Rebecca's recommendations, while building confidence in her professional capabilities and judgment. She had created narratives that addressed potential concerns or objections, while positioning herself as the indispensable advisor, whose services were essential for protecting family financial interests and achieving optimal planning outcomes. The discovery of systematic deception revealed that Rebecca's influence over family financial planning extended far beyond providing professional advisory services to include strategic manipulation of family communication and decision-making processes that served her business interests, while potentially compromising family relationships and optimal financial outcomes for multiple family members over extended time periods. The sophistication of the deception demonstrated calculated approach to client relationship management that prioritized maintaining control over family financial planning rather than ensuring optimal outcomes for family financial security and wealth preservation. The deception had been designed to eliminate potential sources of independent analysis and alternative perspectives that might have identified problems with her recommendations or suggested superior approaches to achieving family financial objectives through less expensive and more flexible planning strategies. The systematic investigation into Rebecca's influence over family financial planning revealed a comprehensive pattern of strategic positioning that extended far beyond individual advisory services to encompass coordinated wealth management for multiple family members, while creating financial dependencies that would ensure long-term revenue generation for her practice. The evidence accumulated over subsequent weeks demonstrated sophisticated business development strategies that prioritized client retention and fee maximization over optimal financial outcomes for family members. My analysis of financial statements and planning documents that various family members had shared revealed consistent patterns in Rebecca's recommendations across different clients within our extended family network. The investment strategies she had implemented for my parents, aunts, uncles, and cousins showed remarkable similarity in fee structures, product selection, and complexity levels, despite significant differences in individual financial circumstances, risk tolerance preferences, and long-term planning objectives. The consistency suggested standardized approach to service delivery that prioritized operational efficiency for Rebecca's practice, rather than customized solutions that would address each family member's unique financial situation and planning requirements. While standardization can provide cost advantages in financial services, the approach Rebecca had implemented appeared designed to maximize her revenue streams while creating uniform dependencies on her ongoing professional management services. The investment products Rebecca had recommended across multiple family accounts included high-fee mutual funds, complex annuity contracts, and structured investment vehicles that generated substantial commissions and ongoing management fees, while potentially limiting investment performance compared to lower-cost alternatives that would have provided comparable or superior long-term returns, with greater flexibility for adapting to changing market conditions. My professional experience in evaluating investment options for corporate retirement plans and institutional portfolios provided perspective on fee structures and performance expectations that enabled objective assessment of the investment strategies Rebecca had recommended for family members. The analysis revealed that her recommendations consistently favored products that maximized advisory fees, while potentially compromising optimal investment outcomes over extended time periods. The insurance and annuity products Rebecca had recommended for various family members included similar patterns of high upfront commissions and ongoing service fees, combined with limited flexibility for modifying coverage or withdrawal provisions as family circumstances changed. While insurance and annuity products serve legitimate financial planning purposes, the specific products Rebecca had recommended appeared selected primarily based on commission structures rather than optimal suitability for individual family members' insurance needs and financial security objectives. The estate planning documents Rebecca had prepared for my parents and several relatives revealed coordinated strategies that would create ongoing trust management and administrative responsibilities that would generate substantial annual fees for her firm for potentially decades after the original client's deaths. The trust structures were technically sophisticated but unnecessarily complex for most family members' estate planning objectives and appeared designed to ensure continued professional management requirements rather than to optimize wealth transfer efficiency and tax minimization outcomes. The charitable giving strategies Rebecca had recommended across multiple family estate plans showed consistent patterns of directing donations toward organizations where she maintained professional relationships through board service or advisory roles. While supporting charitable organizations is a legitimate estate planning strategy that provides genuine tax benefits, the concentration of recommended donations toward organizations that would enhance Rebecca's professional reputation and business development opportunities suggested potential conflicts of interest that had not been adequately disclosed or addressed in planning discussions. My investigation also revealed that Rebecca had been providing regular market analysis reports and financial planning updates to family members that consistently recommended maintaining or expanding their relationships with her firm, while discouraging consideration of alternative investment strategies or advisory services that might provide superior outcomes at lower costs. The reports were professionally prepared and included sophisticated analysis of market conditions and economic trends, but the recommendations consistently reinforced dependency on her services rather than building family members' financial knowledge and decision-making capabilities. The pattern of creating and maintaining client dependency extended to Rebecca's approach to family financial education and communication about investment performance and planning effectiveness. Rather than providing comprehensive information that would enable family members to evaluate her recommendations independently, she had structured reporting and communication processes that emphasized complexity and specialized expertise requirements, while minimizing information that would support independent analysis or comparison with alternative approaches. The educational materials Rebecca provided to family members included detailed explanations of the sophisticated strategies she had implemented, while offering limited information about simpler alternatives that might achieve comparable outcomes with lower costs and greater flexibility. The educational approach appeared designed to reinforce the impression that effective financial planning required specialized expertise that was not available through independent research or alternative advisory relationships. My analysis of Rebecca's business development strategy within our extended family network revealed systematic approach to identifying and cultivating relationships with relatives who possessed significant assets or financial planning needs that could generate substantial ongoing revenue for her practice. She had strategically positioned herself within family social networks to maximize opportunities for expanding her client base, while creating interdependencies among family members that would make it difficult for individual clients to modify or terminate their advisory relationships without affecting other family members' financial planning arrangements. The business development strategy included providing initial services at reduced fees or complimentary consultations that demonstrated her analytical capabilities and professional competence, while creating opportunities to identify more comprehensive financial planning needs that would generate substantial long-term revenue streams. The approach was professionally executed and provided genuine value to family members during initial engagements, but the long-term financial implications of the ongoing advisory relationships appeared to favor her business interests over optimal client outcomes. The evidence accumulated through systematic investigation revealed that Rebecca had implemented comprehensive client relationship management strategy that combined technical competence in financial analysis and planning, with sophisticated understanding of family dynamics and communication patterns that enabled her to maintain control over multiple advisory relationships, while minimizing scrutiny of her recommendations and fee structures. The strategy had been remarkably effective in generating substantial revenue streams while maintaining client satisfaction through professional service delivery and regular communication that addressed immediate planning needs and concerns. However, the approach prioritized Rebecca's business success over optimal financial outcomes for family members and had created dependencies that would be expensive and complicated to modify or terminate if family members decided to pursue alternative advisory relationships or independent financial management approaches. The accumulation of evidence provided comprehensive understanding of the scope and sophistication of Rebecca's influence over family financial planning and the strategic business considerations that had motivated her recommendations regarding estate planning, investment management, insurance coverage, and charitable giving strategies. The evidence would prove essential for making informed decisions about appropriate responses to systematic manipulation of family financial relationships and the long-term implications of maintaining or modifying the advisory arrangements that had been implemented without my knowledge or consultation. The documentation of systematic patterns in Rebecca's approach to family financial planning provided objective foundation for evaluating the costs and benefits of her advisory services compared to alternative approaches that might better serve family interests, while reducing unnecessary complexity and ongoing professional management requirements that primarily benefited her practice rather than family financial security and wealth preservation objectives. The comprehensive evidence regarding Rebecca's strategic manipulation of family financial relationships forced a painful recognition that the foundation of trust upon which I had built my understanding of family dynamics had been systematically undermined over multiple years through deliberate deception and calculated exclusion. This realization transcended immediate concerns about financial planning arrangements to encompass fundamental questions about the nature of family loyalty, communication, and the values that should govern important decisions affecting multiple generations of family members. The broken trust was not simply about being excluded from financial planning discussions or having my professional qualifications dismissed in favor of external advisory services. The deeper violation involved my parents' decision to restructure family financial relationships based on advice from someone whose primary loyalty was to her own business success rather than to family welfare. while simultaneously concealing these changes from family members who would be directly affected by their financial implications. The systematic concealment of estate planning modifications that would substantially reduce inheritance distributions while increasing professional fees represented a fundamental breach of the transparent communication and collaborative decision-making that I had believed characterized our family relationships. My parents had made irrevocable decisions about wealth distribution and family financial security without consulting the beneficiaries whose long-term financial planning would be affected by these arrangements. The recognition of broken trust extended to understanding that my parents had been willing to accept Rebecca's recommendations regarding family exclusion from financial planning discussions, without questioning whether such exclusion served family interests or primarily benefited her business objectives. They had allowed an external advisor to influence fundamental aspects of family communication and decision-making processes, in ways that elevated her authority while diminishing family members' roles in important financial planning decisions. The willingness to accept professional advice that recommended excluding qualified family members from financial planning discussions revealed a troubling pattern of deference to external authority that prioritized perceived expertise over family collaboration and mutual support. My parents had essentially transferred decision-making authority regarding family financial matters to someone whose long-term interests were not aligned with family welfare and financial security objectives. The broken trust was compounded by the realization that Rebecca had actively encouraged family dynamics that prevented scrutiny of her recommendations, while creating dependencies that would ensure long-term revenue generation for her practice. She had positioned herself as protective advisor who was shielding my parents from potential family conflict, while actually creating conditions that would prevent family members from identifying and addressing problems with her advisory services. The systematic manipulation of family communication patterns represented sophisticated understanding of relationship dynamics that enabled Rebecca to maintain control over financial planning processes, while minimizing opportunities for independent analysis or alternative perspectives that might have identified superior approaches to achieving family financial objectives. She had essentially weaponized family members' desire to avoid conflict to prevent collaborative evaluation of her recommendations. The recognition that my parents had been willing participants in excluding me from financial planning decisions that would affect my inheritance and long-term financial security demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding of appropriate boundaries between professional advisory relationships and family loyalty obligations. They had prioritized Rebecca's business interests over family member involvement in decisions that would have lasting implications for family financial relationships and wealth distribution strategies. The broken trust extended to my parents' failure to recognize or address obvious conflicts of interest in Rebecca's recommendations regarding estate planning structures that would generate substantial ongoing fees for her firm, while potentially compromising optimal outcomes for family financial security and wealth preservation. Their acceptance of complex planning arrangements that primarily served Rebecca's business interests revealed either concerning naivete about professional advisory relationships or deliberate willingness to sacrifice family financial optimization for perceived convenience and professional expertise. The systematic exclusion from family financial planning had been justified through narratives that characterized family involvement as potential obstacle to optimal decision-making, rather than recognizing that family collaboration typically improves financial planning outcomes by ensuring that planning decisions align with family values, relationship dynamics, and long-term objectives that external advisors cannot fully understand or appropriately address. The recognition of broken trust included understanding that my siblings had also been excluded from meaningful participation in estate planning discussions, despite their legitimate interests as beneficiaries and their potential contributions to family financial planning decisions. The exclusion had been comprehensive and systematic, suggesting coordinated effort to minimize family involvement in favor of professional management that served Rebecca's business interests while potentially compromising family financial security and relationship dynamics. The realization that my parents had been willing to implement estate planning arrangements that would transfer substantial wealth from family members to professional advisory services without consulting affected beneficiaries represented a profound betrayal of family financial stewardship responsibilities and collaborative decision-making principles that I had believed governed our family approach to important financial matters affecting multiple generations. The broken trust was particularly devastating because it revealed that my parents' expressions of pride in my professional achievements and career advancement had been largely superficial acknowledgments that were not accompanied by genuine confidence in my capabilities or willingness to involve me in family financial matters, where my expertise could have provided significant value and protection against professional manipulation and exploitation. The systematic deception regarding family financial planning arrangements had been maintained through careful management of information sharing and communication processes that prevented family members from developing comprehensive understanding of estate planning changes and their implications for inheritance distributions and long-term family financial security. The information management had been sophisticated enough to maintain family relationships while concealing decisions that would substantially affect family members' financial futures. The recognition that Rebecca had successfully convinced my parents to prioritize her professional recommendations over family collaboration and transparency revealed concerning vulnerabilities in family decision-making processes that could be exploited by other external advisors or service providers, who might seek to maximize their business interests while claiming to serve family welfare and financial security objectives. The broken trust represented not only immediate concerns about current financial planning arrangements, but also fundamental questions about my parents' judgment regarding appropriate boundaries between professional advisory relationships and family loyalty obligations that would affect future decisions about family financial matters and estate planning modifications that might further compromise family financial security and relationship dynamics. The comprehensive pattern of deception and manipulation that had characterized Rebecca's approach to family financial planning demonstrated that the broken trust was not accidental oversight or communication failure, but deliberate strategy designed to maximize her business success while minimizing family scrutiny of her recommendations and fee structures that consistently favored her financial interests over optimal outcomes for family financial security and wealth preservation objectives. The recognition of broken trust provided essential context for understanding that restoring appropriate family financial relationships would require more than improved communication or modified advisory arrangements, but would necessitate fundamental changes in family decision-making processes and accountability mechanisms that would prevent similar manipulation and exploitation in future professional advisory relationships affecting family financial security and wealth management strategies. The accumulation of evidence regarding systematic financial manipulation, combined with the recognition of fundamental trust violations, reached a critical threshold during a telephone conversation with my grandmother, Catherine Richardson, on Friday evening, 3 weeks after the family reunion. This conversation would provide the final piece of information necessary to understand the complete scope of Rebecca's influence over family financial planning, and would create the decisive moment when continued acceptance of these circumstances became psychologically and ethically impossible. Grandmother Catherine, who was 87 years old and had maintained sharp mental acuity despite her advanced age, had been observing family dynamics and financial planning developments with growing concern over the previous year. Her perspective was particularly valuable because she had accumulated substantial wealth through decades of careful investment management and had extensive experience evaluating financial advisors and estate planning strategies that affected multiple generations of family members. During our conversation, Catherine revealed that Rebecca had approached her 6 months earlier with recommendations for restructuring her estate planning arrangements to create coordinated wealth transfer strategies that would integrate her assets with my parents' estate planning while generating substantial ongoing management fees for Rebecca's firm through complex trust structures and investment management services that would continue for decades after Catherine's death. The proposed estate planning modifications would have transferred significant control over Catherine's wealth distribution decisions to Rebecca through discretionary trust arrangements that would enable her to make investment decisions and distribution timing choices that could substantially affect inheritance amounts for family members, while ensuring ongoing professional fees regardless of investment performance or family satisfaction with management services. Catherine had declined Rebecca's recommendations after conducting independent analysis with her longtime attorney and accountant, who had identified numerous problems with the proposed arrangements, including excessive complexity, high ongoing costs, and unnecessary restrictions on beneficiary access to inherited assets that would primarily benefit Rebecca's firm rather than optimizing wealth transfer effectiveness and family financial security. The most disturbing aspect of Catherine's account was Rebecca's response to the rejection of her recommendations. Rather than accepting the decision professionally and maintaining appropriate boundaries, Rebecca had initiated a systematic campaign to undermine Catherine's relationships with other family members by suggesting that her refusal to coordinate estate planning represented stubbornness and outdated thinking that could compromise overall family financial planning effectiveness and wealth preservation strategies. Rebecca had specifically suggested to my parents that Catherine's independence regarding estate planning decisions might create complications for their own financial planning, because uncoordinated inheritance distributions could affect tax planning strategies and estate liquidity requirements that might necessitate modifications to their existing arrangements. This suggestion was designed to create family pressure on Catherine to accept Rebecca's recommendations, despite their problematic fee structures and unnecessary complexity. The manipulation of family dynamics to generate client pressure represented a significant escalation in Rebecca's business development strategy that transcended appropriate professional boundaries and entered territory that could be characterized as exploitative relationship management designed to maximize revenue generation, regardless of client welfare or family relationship preservation. The approach demonstrated calculated willingness to damage family relationships in service of business objectives. Catherine's account also revealed that Rebecca had approached several other elderly family members with similar recommendations for coordinated estate planning that would generate substantial ongoing fees while creating management dependencies that could be difficult to modify or terminate if family circumstances changed, or if her services proved inadequate for achieving family financial objectives and wealth preservation goals. The pattern of targeting elderly family members with complex financial planning recommendations that would benefit primarily Rebecca's firm rather than family financial security represented particularly concerning business development strategy that appeared designed to exploit potential vulnerabilities related to advanced age, desire to avoid family conflict, and limited familiarity with modern financial planning techniques and fee structures. Catherine's independent analysis had revealed that the estate planning strategies Rebecca was recommending across multiple family relationships could ultimately transfer more wealth to professional management fees than would be distributed to family beneficiaries, creating circumstances where the financial advisory relationship became the primary beneficiary of family wealth accumulation, rather than serving its intended purpose of preserving and transferring wealth to future generations. The mathematical analysis of cumulative fees across multiple family estate planning arrangements demonstrated that Rebecca had developed a business model that could generate millions of dollars in professional revenue over extended time periods, while potentially compromising optimal wealth transfer outcomes for family members who were supposedly being served by these comprehensive financial planning and estate management services. The revelation of systematic targeting of elderly family members with questionable estate planning recommendations provided crucial context for understanding the complete scope of Rebecca's business development strategy and the potential long-term implications of allowing her influence over family financial planning to continue expanding without appropriate oversight and accountability measures to protect family financial interests and relationship dynamics. Catherine's warning that Rebecca would likely intensify efforts to expand her influence over family financial planning if current arrangements continued without challenge highlighted the urgency of addressing these issues before additional family members became entangled in financial arrangements that served primarily Rebecca's business interests while potentially compromising their individual financial security and estate planning effectiveness. The conversation with Catherine also provided perspective on family dynamics that had enabled Rebecca's manipulation to succeed without detection or challenge from family members who possessed the financial knowledge and independence necessary to identify and address problematic advisory relationships and their implications for family financial security and wealth preservation strategies. The systematic manipulation of family communication patterns had prevented collaborative evaluation of Rebecca's recommendations and had created information silos that allowed her to provide different explanations and justifications to different family members without risk of inconsistencies being identified through family discussions about estate planning strategies and their long-term implications for family financial relationships. Catherine's decision to maintain independence regarding her estate planning despite family pressure and professional recommendations demonstrated that resistance to Rebecca's influence was possible when family members possessed sufficient financial knowledge, independent advisory relationships, and personal conviction to prioritize family financial interests over perceived convenience or professional expertise that might not serve optimal wealth preservation and transfer objectives. The catalyst for decisive action crystallized during this conversation as I recognized that Rebecca's business development strategy would continue expanding unless family members took definitive action to establish boundaries and consequences that would prevent further manipulation of family financial relationships and protect remaining family assets from exploitation through professional advisory arrangements that prioritized revenue generation over client welfare. The recognition that Catherine's independence had made her a target for increased pressure and manipulation demonstrated that passive acceptance of current circumstances would not prevent escalation of problematic advisory relationships, but would actually encourage their expansion as Rebecca sought to maximize revenue generation from family wealth through comprehensive management services that could continue for decades regardless of their effectiveness in achieving family financial objectives. The decisive moment arrived with absolute clarity about the choice between continued acceptance of systematic financial manipulation that would affect multiple generations of family members, or taking immediate action to establish consequences that would protect family financial interests, while demonstrating the cost of prioritizing external advisory relationships over family collaboration and transparent communication about important financial decisions affecting family wealth preservation and distribution strategies. The comprehensive understanding of Rebecca's systematic manipulation of family financial relationships necessitated careful analysis of available response options that could effectively address the immediate problems while establishing long-term protection against similar exploitation. The strategic assessment required balancing multiple objectives, including protecting family financial interests, preserving important family relationships where possible, and creating accountability measures that would prevent future manipulation of family wealth management and estate planning processes. The first option under consideration involved direct confrontation with Rebecca regarding her business practices and their impact on family financial security and relationship dynamics. This approach would include presentation of evidence regarding fee structures, conflicts of interest, and manipulation tactics that had been employed to maximize her revenue generation, while potentially compromising optimal financial outcomes for family members. The confrontation would demand immediate cessation of problematic practices and modification of existing advisory arrangements to better serve family interests. The direct confrontation strategy offered potential advantages including immediate addressing of current problems, opportunity to negotiate improved terms for ongoing advisory relationships, and demonstration of family members' awareness of manipulation tactics that had been employed. However, the approach also presented significant risks, including potential escalation of conflict, possible legal complications if accusations were not carefully substantiated, and likelihood that Rebecca would intensify efforts to maintain control over existing client relationships through defensive strategies that might further compromise family dynamics. The analysis of confrontation strategy revealed that Rebecca's sophisticated approach to client relationship management would likely enable her to deflect criticism while maintaining client loyalty through professional positioning that emphasized her expertise and commitment to family financial security. Her established relationships with multiple family members would provide defensive advantages that could make direct confrontation ineffective, while potentially damaging family relationships that remained important, despite current problems with financial planning arrangements. The second strategic option involved working within existing family communication systems to educate family members about problems with current financial planning arrangements, while building consensus for collaborative evaluation of alternative approaches that could better serve family financial interests. This strategy would require systematic presentation of evidence regarding fee structures, investment performance, and estate planning effectiveness, compared to alternative approaches available through independent analysis and competitive advisory services. The educational approach offered advantages including potential preservation of family relationships, opportunity for collaborative decision-making that could strengthen family communication patterns, and possibility of achieving comprehensive reforms that would benefit all affected family members simultaneously. The strategy aligned with family values regarding consultation and consensus building, while addressing legitimate concerns about financial planning effectiveness and professional advisory relationship management. However, the educational strategy presented challenges including extended timeline requirements that might allow continued exploitation during transition periods, potential resistance from family members who had developed confidence in Rebecca's services, and possibility that systematic manipulation of family communication patterns would prevent effective information sharing and collaborative evaluation of alternative approaches to family financial planning and wealth management strategies. The third strategic option involved independent action to protect my specific financial interests, while allowing other family members to maintain their advisory relationships with Rebecca if they chose to continue despite evidence of problematic business practices. This approach would include formal notification to my parents regarding withdrawal from inheritance arrangements that had been modified without my consultation, along with establishment of independent estate planning and wealth management strategies that would not be affected by Rebecca's ongoing influence over family financial planning processes. The independent action strategy offered advantages including immediate protection of my financial interests, elimination of dependency on family financial planning decisions that might be compromised by conflicted advisory relationships, and demonstration of consequences for excluding qualified family members from important financial discussions. The approach would preserve my professional integrity while establishing clear boundaries regarding acceptable family financial relationship management practices. The independent strategy would also enable me to provide alternative example of financial planning effectiveness that might eventually influence other family members to reconsider their advisory relationships if my independent approaches produce superior outcomes over time. The demonstration effect could provide more persuasive influence than direct confrontation or educational efforts that might be dismissed as family conflict rather than legitimate professional concerns about advisory service quality. The strategic assessment revealed that independent action represented the most viable approach for achieving immediate protection of my financial interests while maintaining long-term flexibility for family relationship preservation and potential future collaboration on family financial planning initiatives that might emerge if other family members eventually recognized problems with their current advisory arrangements and sought alternatives that better served family welfare objectives. The independent strategy would require careful legal and financial planning to ensure complete separation from estate planning arrangements that had been compromised by Rebecca's influence while establishing optimal wealth management approaches that could demonstrate superior outcomes compared to complex advisory relationships that prioritized revenue generation over client financial security and investment performance optimization. The implementation of independent action strategy would necessitate comprehensive documentation of reasons for withdrawal from family inheritance arrangements, including evidence of systematic exclusion from financial planning discussions despite professional qualifications, demonstration of problematic advisory practices that served primarily Rebecca's business interests, and clear communication of willingness to restore family financial collaboration if appropriate accountability measures were established to prevent future manipulation. The strategic assessment also considered potential long-term implications of independent action for family relationship dynamics and future collaboration opportunities. The approach would establish precedent for family members taking individual responsibility for protecting their financial interests when collaborative approaches were not viable, while maintaining possibility of future participation in family financial planning if systemic problems were addressed through appropriate reforms and accountability measures. The independent action strategy aligned with professional standards regarding fiduciary responsibility and ethical financial management that required prioritizing client welfare over relationship convenience or conflict avoidance when fundamental financial interests were at stake. The approach reflected appropriate application of professional expertise to personal financial planning while maintaining integrity regarding family relationship values and collaborative decision-making preferences. The comprehensive strategic assessment revealed that independent action represented optimal balance of immediate financial protection, long-term flexibility preservation, and professional integrity maintenance while avoiding confrontational approaches that might damage important family relationships unnecessarily or educational efforts that might prove ineffective given the sophisticated manipulation tactics that had been employed to maintain current advisory arrangements. The strategic decision to pursue independent action would require immediate implementation to prevent further compromise of my financial interests, while establishing foundation for potential future family financial collaboration if appropriate systemic reforms were achieved through demonstration of alternative approaches that better served family wealth preservation and transfer objectives than current advisory arrangements that prioritized professional revenue generation over optimal client outcomes and family financial security enhancement. The decision to pursue independent action required immediate implementation of comprehensive legal and financial planning measures that would effectively separate my interests from estate planning arrangements that had been compromised by systematic manipulation and exclusion. The implementation process demanded meticulous attention to legal requirements, documentation standards, and communication protocols that would ensure complete protection of my financial interests while maintaining professional integrity and preserving opportunities for future family collaboration under appropriate circumstances. The first phase of implementation involved engaging independent legal counsel with specialized expertise in estate planning, inheritance law, and fiduciary responsibility to ensure that withdrawal from compromised family financial arrangements would be legally sound and practically effective. Attorney Margaret Walsh at Crawford & Associates possessed extensive experience in complex family wealth management disputes and had successfully represented clients in situations involving conflicted financial advisory relationships and questionable estate planning modifications. Margaret's initial analysis confirmed that my parents' estate planning modifications had been implemented without required consultation with affected beneficiaries and contained provisions that potentially violated fiduciary responsibilities regarding transparent communication about material changes affecting inheritance distributions. The legal review revealed multiple grounds for challenging the modifications, while also identifying optimal strategies for complete separation from potentially problematic arrangements. The legal assessment demonstrated that formal withdrawal from inheritance expectations would provide stronger protection than attempting to challenge existing arrangements through litigation that might consume substantial resources while producing uncertain outcomes. The withdrawal strategy would eliminate exposure to ongoing financial manipulation while preserving legal options for future action if circumstances warranted more aggressive approaches to protecting family financial interests. The second phase of implementation required establishing independent wealth management and estate planning arrangements that would optimize my financial security while demonstrating superior outcomes compared to approaches that prioritized advisory fee generation over client welfare. The independent financial planning would serve multiple purposes, including immediate protection of assets, long-term wealth optimization, and potential demonstration of more effective strategies that might eventually influence other family members to reconsider their advisory relationships. The wealth management strategy incorporated institutional investment platforms available through my position at Hartwell Industries, which provided access to investment opportunities and fee structures that were substantially superior to retail financial services that Rebecca had been providing to family members. The institutional access would enable achievement of superior investment performance while maintaining significantly lower costs compared to complex advisory arrangements that generated high ongoing fees. The estate planning component included establishment of revocable trust structures that would provide optimal tax efficiency and wealth transfer flexibility, while maintaining complete independence from family arrangements that had been compromised by conflicted advisory relationships. The independent estate planning would demonstrate effective wealth preservation strategies that could serve as alternative model for family members who might eventually seek options that better served their financial interests. The third phase of implementation involved comprehensive documentation of reasons for withdrawal from family inheritance arrangements, including detailed analysis of systematic exclusion from financial planning discussions, evidence of professional manipulation tactics, and clear articulation of standards that would need to be met for future participation in collaborative family financial planning initiatives. The documentation would serve multiple purposes, including legal protection for withdrawal decisions, educational resource for family members who might question the rationale for independent action, and framework for potential future negotiations regarding restoration of family financial collaboration under appropriate accountability and transparency measures. The formal notification process required careful consideration of communication timing, audience selection, and message content that would effectively convey serious concerns about current arrangements, while maintaining respectful tone and preserving possibilities for future relationship repair, if systemic problems were addressed through appropriate reforms and accountability measures. The notification strategy included separate communications for different family member categories, based on their level of involvement in compromised financial planning arrangements and their potential influence over future family financial decision-making processes. The differentiated approach would enable customized messaging that addressed specific concerns and interests while maintaining consistent overall themes regarding professional integrity and family financial protection standards. The communication to my parents would emphasize professional concerns about advisory relationship quality and fiduciary responsibility standards, while clearly stating withdrawal from inheritance arrangements that had been modified without consultation. The message would include invitation for future collaboration if appropriate transparency and accountability measures were implemented, to prevent similar manipulation of family financial relationships. The communication to my siblings would provide comprehensive analysis of problematic advisory practices and their implications for family financial security, while offering collaboration on alternative approaches that could better serve their individual financial interests and long-term wealth preservation objectives. The approach would position withdrawal as protective action rather than punitive response while maintaining supportive stance regarding their individual financial planning needs. The communication to extended family members would focus on educational aspects regarding financial advisory relationship evaluation and warning about potential manipulation tactics that might be employed to expand advisory influence over family wealth management decisions. The message would provide framework for independent analysis of advisory arrangements while respecting individual autonomy regarding financial planning choices. The fourth phase of implementation required establishing monitoring and evaluation systems that would track the effectiveness of independent financial strategies while documenting ongoing developments in family financial arrangements that might affect future collaboration opportunities or require additional protective measures to prevent further exploitation of family wealth. The monitoring systems would include regular analysis of investment performance comparisons between independent strategies and family arrangements, assessment of advisory fee impacts on family wealth preservation effectiveness, and evaluation of estate planning outcome projections under different scenarios that might develop based on continued or modified advisory relationships. The implementation process also included preparation for potential family responses to withdrawal notification, including defensive reactions from parents who might feel criticized for their financial planning decisions, attempts by Rebecca to minimize the significance of withdrawal through professional positioning strategies, and possible pressure from family members who might interpret independent action as disloyalty rather than protective financial planning. The preparation for family responses included development of communication strategies that would maintain professional tone, while clearly articulating non-negotiable standards for future family financial collaboration. The approach would emphasize positive vision for potential future relationships, while maintaining firm boundaries regarding accountability and transparency requirements that would prevent similar manipulation. The comprehensive implementation of independent strategy represented commitment to professional integrity and family financial protection standards that transcended immediate convenience or conflict avoidance considerations. The approach reflected application of corporate financial management principles to personal and family financial planning, while maintaining respect for family relationship values and collaborative decision-making preferences where appropriate accountability measures could be established. The implementation process would require sustained commitment to independent financial management excellence that could demonstrate superior outcomes over time, while preserving flexibility for future family collaboration if systematic problems were addressed through appropriate reforms that prioritized family welfare over external advisory business interests and revenue generation objectives. The moment of decisive communication arrived on Tuesday morning, October 15th, precisely 4 weeks after the family reunion that had revealed the extent of systematic exclusion from family financial planning. The carefully planned notifications would be delivered through multiple channels designed to ensure comprehensive understanding while maintaining professional standards and preserving dignity for all parties involved in what would inevitably become a transformative moment in family relationship dynamics. The primary communication to my parents was scheduled for delivery at 9 o'clock through registered mail to ensure official documentation while providing them adequate time to process the information before any follow-up discussions might occur. The written format would enable precise articulation of complex issues without emotional interference, while creating permanent record of the rationale and standards that governed this decisive action regarding inheritance arrangements. The formal letter began with acknowledgement of their autonomy regarding estate planning decisions, while establishing the fundamental principle that such decisions affecting multiple beneficiaries warranted transparent communication and consultation with affected family members. The opening section emphasized respect for their priorities while clearly articulating professional standards regarding fiduciary responsibility and family financial stewardship that had not been adequately addressed in recent planning modifications. The central portion of the communication provided comprehensive analysis of the systematic exclusion from financial planning discussions, despite demonstrated professional qualifications and career achievements that positioned me uniquely well to contribute to family wealth management and estate planning effectiveness. The analysis included specific examples of institutional resources and professional expertise that could have benefited family financial security, while reducing dependency on external advisory relationships that prioritized revenue generation over optimal client outcomes. The documentation presented detailed evidence regarding Rebecca's business development strategies that consistently recommended approaches serving her firm's financial interests rather than optimizing family wealth preservation and transfer effectiveness. The analysis included comparative fee structures, investment performance projections, and estate planning complexity assessments that demonstrated how alternative approaches could achieve superior outcomes while reducing ongoing professional management costs and administrative burdens. The letter articulated specific concerns regarding estate planning modifications that had been implemented without beneficiary consultation, including trust structures that would transfer substantial control over inheritance distributions to discretionary management arrangements serving primarily advisory fee generation rather than family financial security optimization. The analysis demonstrated how these modifications represented fundamental changes in wealth transfer priorities that warranted comprehensive family discussion before implementation. The communication included formal notification of withdrawal from inheritance expectations under current estate planning arrangements, with clear explanation that this decision reflected protective response to systematic exclusion and professional manipulation rather than rejection of family relationships or values. The withdrawal was positioned as necessary measure to maintain financial integrity while establishing accountability standards for potential future collaboration. The letter concluded with explicit invitation for restored family financial collaboration if appropriate transparency and accountability measures were implemented, including independent oversight of advisory relationships, comprehensive fee disclosure requirements, and meaningful participation by qualified family members in estate planning decision-making processes. The framework provided clear pathway for relationship restoration while maintaining non-negotiable standards regarding family financial stewardship and professional integrity. The communication to my siblings Marcus and Diana was delivered simultaneously through personal meetings scheduled for that afternoon, enabling direct discussion of complex issues, while providing emotional support during what would likely be difficult conversations about family dynamics and financial planning implications. The face-to-face format would allow customized presentation based on their individual concerns and questions, while maintaining consistent messaging about protective rationale and future collaboration possibilities. The sibling communications emphasized shared interests regarding family financial security and estate planning effectiveness, while acknowledging their individual autonomy regarding advisory relationships and inheritance arrangements. The approach positioned withdrawal as protective action that could potentially benefit all family members by demonstrating alternative approaches to wealth management that prioritized family interests over external advisory revenue generation. The discussions with Marcus and Diana included comprehensive presentation of evidence regarding systematic manipulation tactics and their implications for long-term family wealth preservation effectiveness. The analysis provided framework for independent evaluation of their own advisory relationships, while respecting their decision-making autonomy and maintaining supportive stance regarding their individual financial planning needs and objectives. The sibling communications also addressed potential family relationship implications of withdrawal decision, acknowledging likelihood of initial tension while expressing commitment to maintaining important family connections independent of inheritance and financial planning arrangements. The approach emphasized distinction between financial protection measures and family relationship values, while providing reassurance about continued availability for mutual support and collaboration in non-financial contexts. The communication to extended family members was implemented through selective outreach to relatives who had demonstrated independent thinking regarding financial planning or who might be vulnerable to similar manipulation tactics in future advisory relationship developments. The approach included grandmother Catherine, Uncle Thomas, and cousin Jennifer, who possessed combination of financial sophistication and family influence that could support protective measures for other family members. The extended family communications focused on educational aspects regarding advisory relationship evaluation standards and warning indicators for potentially problematic business development strategies that might target family wealth for excessive fee generation rather than optimal financial planning outcomes. The information provided framework for independent analysis while respecting individual autonomy regarding financial planning choices and advisory relationships. The comprehensive communication strategy included preparation for anticipated responses from various family members and Rebecca herself, who would likely implement defensive positioning strategies designed to minimize the significance of withdrawal while maintaining control over existing client relationships. The preparation included development of consistent messaging that would address potential criticism while maintaining professional standards and protective objectives. The response preparation acknowledged possibility of family members interpreting withdrawal decision as disloyalty or overreaction rather than legitimate protective measure based on documented evidence of systematic manipulation and exclusion. The approach included strategies for maintaining respectful dialogue while clearly articulating non-negotiable standards for family financial collaboration and professional advisory relationship accountability. The decisive communication represented culmination of comprehensive analysis and strategic planning that prioritized family financial protection over relationship convenience while maintaining possibility for future collaboration under appropriate circumstances. The approach reflected application of professional standards to personal and family financial planning while preserving respect for family relationship values and individual decision-making autonomy. The implementation of decisive communication established precedent for family financial stewardship accountability that could potentially benefit multiple family members by demonstrating consequences for systematic exclusion and professional manipulation, while providing framework for restored collaboration if appropriate transparency and oversight measures were implemented to prevent similar exploitation in future financial planning relationships. The communication process initiated transformation of family financial relationship dynamics that would require sustained commitment to professional integrity and family protection standards while maintaining flexibility for potential relationship restoration, if systemic problems were addressed through appropriate accountability measures and collaborative decision-making processes that honored both family values and professional fiduciary responsibility requirements. The 24 hours following delivery of the decisive communications produced a cascade of responses that revealed the depth of family members' emotional investment in existing financial arrangements, while simultaneously demonstrating the effectiveness of Rebecca's client relationship management strategies in maintaining loyalty despite documented evidence of systematic manipulation. The initial reactions provided valuable insights into family dynamics and communication patterns that would influence long-term outcomes of the withdrawal decision and potential pathways for future relationship restoration. My father called within 3 hours of receiving the registered letter, his voice displaying a combination of confusion, anger, and defensive concern that reflected the psychological impact of confronting uncomfortable truths about advisory relationships he had believed were serving family interests effectively. The conversation began with his assertion that my concerns were based on misunderstanding of complex financial planning requirements and overreaction to normal professional advisory practices that all sophisticated wealth management relationships necessarily involved. His initial response demonstrated the effectiveness of Rebecca's educational approach in positioning complexity and high fees as indicators of professional sophistication rather than potential warning signs of exploitative business practices. He had been conditioned to interpret my concerns about fee structures and conflicts of interest as evidence of insufficient understanding of modern estate planning requirements rather than legitimate professional analysis based on institutional financial management experience and fiduciary responsibility standards. The defensive positioning extended to his characterization of my exclusion from family financial planning discussions as appropriate professional boundary management rather than systematic manipulation designed to prevent scrutiny of questionable recommendations. He had accepted Rebecca's narrative that family involvement in estate planning created unnecessary complications and emotional interference that could compromise optimal decision-making, rather than recognizing that family collaboration typically improves financial planning outcomes through diverse perspectives and accountability measures. My father's response included expressions of disappointment that I would prioritize financial considerations over family relationships, demonstrating fundamental misunderstanding of the protective rationale that had motivated withdrawal from compromised inheritance arrangements. His interpretation reflected successful manipulation of family communication patterns that characterize professional integrity measures as disloyalty rather than appropriate fiduciary responsibility standards applied to family financial stewardship obligations. The conversation revealed his genuine belief that Rebecca's services were providing superior financial planning outcomes compared to alternatives that might be available through family collaboration or independent advisory relationships. This conviction had been reinforced through regular reporting and communication processes that emphasized her professional achievements, while minimizing information that might support comparative analysis or independent evaluation of service quality and cost-effectiveness. My mother's response arrived through an emotional voicemail message, delivered 6 hours after the letter's receipt, expressing hurt and bewilderment that I would reject family relationships over financial disagreements that she characterized as misunderstandings about appropriate professional advisory practices. Her reaction demonstrated the personal investment she had developed in her relationship with Rebecca, and her interpretation of withdrawal as rejection of family values rather than protection of family financial interests. Her message revealed the extent to which Rebecca had positioned herself as protective advisor, who was shielding my parents from potential family conflict while ensuring optimal estate planning outcomes. My mother had internalized the narrative that family financial planning required professional objectivity that could not be maintained through family collaboration, despite evidence that such collaboration typically produces superior outcomes when properly structured and managed. The emotional intensity of her response reflected genuine concern about potential damage to family relationships, combined with defensive reaction to implications that their financial planning decisions might not serve family interests effectively. She had been conditioned to interpret criticism of advisory arrangements as personal attack on their judgment and decision-making capabilities, rather than professional analysis of service quality and fiduciary responsibility standards. My brother Marcus contacted me the following morning to express his confusion about the timing and necessity of formal withdrawal from inheritance arrangements that he characterized as extreme response to advisory relationships that seemed to be functioning effectively for parents who were satisfied with professional services they were receiving. His perspective reflected limited awareness of the systematic manipulation that had been operating within family financial planning processes. Marcus's response demonstrated the information asymmetry that Rebecca had created among family members, providing different levels of information and different explanations to different relatives to prevent comprehensive understanding of her business development strategies and their implications for family financial security. His limited perspective had been carefully managed to maintain positive impressions of advisory service quality while minimizing awareness of problematic fee structures and conflicts of interest. His reaction included concern about potential family relationship damage that might result from formal inheritance withdrawal, suggesting that accommodation and compromise would be preferable to confrontational approaches that could create permanent divisions within family dynamics. This perspective reflected successful manipulation of family communication patterns that prioritized harmony over accountability and transparency in important financial decision-making processes. My sister Diana's response was notably different from other family members, expressing appreciation for comprehensive analysis of advisory relationships and acknowledgement that she had developed similar concerns about fee structures and complexity levels in her own financial planning arrangements with Rebecca. Her reaction provided the first indication that systematic manipulation tactics might be losing effectiveness as family members gained more experience with advisory services and developed greater sophistication about financial planning evaluation criteria. Diana's willingness to consider alternative perspectives regarding advisory relationship quality suggested potential opportunity for collaborative analysis of family financial planning effectiveness and possible coordination of protective measures that could benefit multiple family members simultaneously. Her response indicated that educational approaches might be more effective than anticipated in promoting independent evaluation of advisory arrangements and their long-term implications for family financial security. Her communication included questions about alternative financial planning approaches that might provide superior outcomes, while reducing dependency on external advisory relationships that had proven problematic in their fee structures and decision-making processes. This inquiry demonstrated genuine interest in learning about institutional resources and professional expertise that could enhance family financial planning effectiveness through different service delivery models. The extended family responses varied significantly based on their individual relationships with Rebecca and their level of sophistication regarding financial planning evaluation standards. Grandmother Catherine expressed strong support for withdrawal decision while sharing additional concerns about Rebecca's business development strategies that she had observed during recent family gatherings and professional interactions. Uncle Thomas provided validation of concerns about estate planning complexity and fee structures, while offering assistance with independent analysis of family financial arrangements, if such evaluation would be helpful for other family members who might be developing similar questions about advisory service quality and cost-effectiveness. Cousin Jennifer expressed surprise about the scope of financial planning modifications that had been implemented without broader family discussion, acknowledging that she had assumed that such significant decisions would involve consultation with affected family members, as had been traditional practice in previous generations of family estate planning and wealth management activities. The most concerning response came from Rebecca herself, who contacted my parents within hours of their receipt of withdrawal notification to schedule emergency meeting for addressing what she characterized as misunderstandings about professional advisory practices and family financial planning requirements that could be resolved through improved communication and educational initiatives regarding modern estate planning methodologies. Her immediate defensive response demonstrated sophisticated crisis management strategies designed to maintain client relationships during challenges to advisory service quality, while positioning criticism as misunderstanding rather than legitimate professional concerns about business practices and fiduciary responsibility standards. The rapid mobilization of defensive positioning indicated prior preparation for potential challenges to her advisory relationships and their underlying business model. The initial reactions and responses provided comprehensive insight into family dynamics and communication patterns that would influence the effectiveness of withdrawal decision in achieving protective objectives, while maintaining possibilities for future relationship restoration under appropriate accountability and transparency measures. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.